Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Inclusive Teacher Co podcast with me, Steph Beatty. I'm an ex English teacher, I'm a neurodiversity and literacy specialist. I work with parents and educators across the globe, and I train in all matters of neurodiversity with a specific focus on ADHD and literacy. Today is a little bit of a different one because I know that we have a lot of people listening who are teachers who teach girls, of course, are women with ADHD, and also teachers who have ADHD. So, if you are any one of those people, then this is probably for you. And I'm going to talk today about how I was missed. My ADHD was missed when I was in school because I was academic. Now, I'm not going to place any blame on anyone here. I just want to make that very, very clear. This is not about placing blame on any of my teachers. I actually really loved learning. I loved school. I wanted to please my teachers. I wanted to get good grades. I placed some of my self worth, not all, on my grades. And I've done well academically and successfully in my life. But I was missed. My ADHD was missed because I was academic. I was not the kid that teachers worried about. I was bright, academic, upset, good at English, obviously, why I became an English teacher. I got good at remembering things. I was the sort of student who looked like she had herself together, which in hindsight was very unhelpful. I was diagnosed with ADHD at 37, depending on when you are listening to this. I'm 30 no, I'm 38. Good grief. I'm 38 now and I'll be 39 in September of 20. But it all makes a lot of sense now. Not in like a dramatic film scene sort of way, but more in like a quiet, slightly irritating, that explains a lot sort of way. So if this is an episode that you think might resonate with you or you get something out of it, please click subscribe, head over to Instagram Inclusive Teacher Co. And also head over to ADHD Hair UK and connect with me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok there. I am on every platform that you could possibly imagine, maybe except one or two. And I talk a lot about this. And so this isn't the typical pod that I'm used to recording on here. So please do subscribe. And if you want to read my newsletter on LinkedIn as well, or if you're a teacher and you want to receive a newsletter, check out the show links below. So let me start by telling you the thing is that I was never actually labeled lazy, even though sometimes I felt lazy. I didn't always revise. I didn't always do my homework if I didn't like the subject. And I did feel lazy. And I think that story is true for a lot of women, but it wasn't mine. I was labeled intelligent, clever, academic, a nerd, a swot, a geek, a tryhard. And I did really well in the subjects that I loved. And I could retain an absolutely ridiculous amount of information when something genuinely interested me. But revision wasn't exactly a spiritual gift. And science were things that got a little bit more complicated for me even though I was in top set. It's not that I was incapable, I wasn't. I just found it really hard to connect to maths and science. For example, DT, I absolutely couldn't bear. These sorts of subjects that didn't interest me felt detached from me and my real life. They felt really pointless, abstract, dry, if I'm being really honest. Maths actually became a little bit more interesting to me when I started buying houses. I never thought in a million years I would be working spreadsheets and figuring out how maths made me money. All right. Science might have had a fighting chance if someone had said, right, now we're going to learn about how forensic evidence will catch a serial killer. If it had been framed as sort of like CSI and not just another worksheet, I probably would have locked in. But when you've got a chemistry teacher, bless him, who was as boring as the day is long, it's no wonder I couldn't engage. He was lovely, but he's what I call a proper dry lunch. He used to play, bless him, classical music during our revision sessions, which I know now has a lot of benefits for studying, but at the time we used to call him Disco Dave, like ironically. And he wasn't the most engaging of teachers. I'm not saying he wasn't a good teacher, but he wasn't engaging. And the thing is, these kids with ADHD, they don't need more nagging. They need relevance. They need to know why something matters. They need to know that the learning is connected to real life and not just handed to them like some sort of cold plate of facts that they need to swallow to please their teachers or swallow out of politeness. And it might seem stupidly obvious to a lot of people that maths and money are related. But if I'd have been taught more about how to work out my tax or budgeting or how to make money on my money through investing, I probably would have enjoyed maths more. Okay. I mean, I'm not an uneducated person. I did really well, but would you believe I had to Google how to figure out an area when I needed to buy tiles for my first house and wallpaper and so on. So something so basic I completely forgot. Had they have mentioned in school why working out area might be important for a home, I might have been more inclined to pay attention. And I still remember teachers not understanding why I wanted to sit the foundation paper and not the higher paper in maths and science, despite being in the top set all throughout school. Because, and I've been a teacher myself, so I get it, but because from their point of view, it absolutely made no sense. I was really bright. I performed well in class. I was capable of achieving an A or an A star. Why on earth would I limit myself to a grade C? But what did it matter to me? I'm like, I'm going to be an English teacher. I love English. You know, I could do basic maths. And I swear some teachers thought that these GCSE grades would be the be all and end all of our lives. But anyway, I digress as usual. The bottom line is, to get back on track, I was academic. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons that girls get missed. If you are articulate, if you're academically able and broadly compliant, I mean, I was great inside school, but outside school is a whole different blog and a whole different kid. People assume you're fine. So if you're doing well enough that the adults around you, you know, think that you're doing well enough, they don't stop to ask what that performance is costing you or how much of it is actually being held together by interest, memory, adrenaline, pressure, positive pressure, or sheer force. And it costs a lot of girls. And I've seen it as an educator and I see it all the time. So even when I was still a classroom teacher, I would have these wonderfully bright girls. They would hand in essays I never used to ask them to write just because they were so desperate to please me, gain some validation, or sometimes gone down a bit of an interest rabbit hole because that was the topic that they loved and they needed me to have a little look at it as well. And the thing for me there was that I didn't want them to not go down these rabbit holes, but I didn't want extra marking because I had enough to do. But I also didn't want to discourage them. But if I did discourage them, would that make them feel like shit? And it was a whole spiral. But of course, some of them had ADHD. It was staring me in the face and I never clicked. And I used to pride myself, like, honestly, guys, I don't say this in arrogance. I was a damn good teacher. I mean, there might be some students who disagree with me, but I was a damn good teacher. I got results. I built confidence. I had happy kids in my class. I used to have my boy heavy GCSE class, you know, my CD borderlines who loved football. Sometimes it was like trying to put a lid on frogs, trying to get them to engage. But I had them walking out my subject, talking about how Lady Macbeth is a psycho bitch. You know, I was a good teacher. But again, I digress. No ADHD here. But of course, a lot of these girls had ADHD. And as I say, it was staring me in the face. And there is still this really painfully, I suppose that's the right phrase, painfully outdated idea of ADHD floating around schools and societies. Okay, so for some reason, ADHD still means naughty boys, bad grades, behavior problems, constant disruption, low level disruption, can't sit still. They're an obvious problem because they can't comply. And that stereotype hasn't done any favors for any girls either. And the National Institute for Healthcare and Excellence, or NICE, NICA, they're very clear that ADHD is under-recognized in girls and women, and they're less likely to be referred for a diagnosis or even for an assessment. So they're more likely to be misdiagnosed. So they're given the wrong diagnosis, maybe even dyslexia, anxiety, depression, for example. And they're even less likely to be prescribed medication once they are diagnosed, would you believe? So if this isn't a systemic oversight, I don't know what is. And let's just pull up some other recent research. Also shows that females are less likely to be diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood. And we know a primary age girl is more likely to be diagnosed with dyslexia. Okay. They typically receive the diagnosis later than males. There was a 2024 review in the Lancet Psychiatry, and it pulled together the evidence on exactly that. There was a 2024 commentary discussing earlier findings, highlighted that women with ADHD were diagnosed nearly 4 years later than men on average. Okay. That is freaking insane. 4 years is not nothing. 4 years is school. 4 years is self-concept. 4 years is wondering why things looked manageable for everyone else, but feel much harder than they should. You grow up being told that you're clever, and you know you're clever, but at the same time, there are parts of school that are bizarrely hard. Like, you can excel in one subject, you mentally leave your own frigging body in another. You can write a brilliant essay, but you can't revise for an exam. You can sit at the top set and quietly know your relationship with learning isn't as straightforward as what everyone thinks, so you put on a show, and God forbid you get a question wrong. Okay, this contradiction does something to us. It's confusing, it's shameful, and not the shame of being seen as incapable, because you're not. It's the shame of knowing you are capable and still not always being able to do what you should be doing on paper. And it should be simple on paper. And that's why I get so frustrated when people say things like, well, she's doing well enough, as if it ends the bloody conversation. Okay, it should begin conversation. So a better question isn't how could she have ADHD if she's achieving. It could be at what cost. How is she achieving? What is driving it? Is it interest, pressure, fear of failure, people pleasing, masking, good memory, last minute panic and frickin' prayer? Okay, these are the girls that are doing well but they're still struggling. The girls who look fine, but that's because they're bright enough to mask. They're bright enough to compensate. There are girls who can produce good work and still feel chronically inconsistent. They feel overloaded and they're quietly different. So I think intelligence can conceal ADHD just as effectively as poor attainment can reveal it. And I'm going to say that again. Intelligence can conceal ADHD just as effectively as poor attainment can reveal it. And that is one of the reasons this matters so much now. Okay. And it's also one of the reasons I care about the book that I'm putting together, an anthology. It's called ADHD Hair, The Truth That Took Too Long. Each chapter is written by a late diagnosed woman. And I want other women to read those stories and hopefully feel seen, feel validated, feel like they can relate to this, so that, they don't feel analyzed. They're hopefully not patronized. They just feel seen. And there are so many women whose lives make more sense once the right lens is put on them. Women who were never this obvious concern because they were bright enough to pass. They were articulate enough to explain themselves and capable enough to keep adults off the scent. Okay. And women who did well, but paid for it silently and privately. And a lot of us, we were missed, not in spite of our academically ability, but partly because of it. That should challenge schools. It should challenge parents. It should challenge every bloody lazy stereotype about what ADHD is supposed to look like. I was missed because I was academic, and I know I'm not the only one. If you're a woman with ADHD, or even you have a woman with ADHD in your life and she is somewhat of an entrepreneur, or self-employed or a business owner, I am actually launching in the autumn something called ADHD Hair, which is a community for women with ADHD. So it's going to be well-being support and, of course, a laugh, because I'm anything if not fun, guys. And there will be some meetups on occasion. So you can check out ADHD Hair UK on Facebook and Instagram for the more informal content that you won't hear on this pod, or you won't read on my LinkedIn or my teacher newsletter. But if you are a parent or educator and you need more help with neurodiversity, ADHD in general, please check out Inclusive Teacher Co. on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, not Twitter, that's a lie, TikTok. There are free webinars, free resources, and of course, training enquiries. I just want to say thank you for listening, because this is something I'm very passionate about, something that I'm talking loudly about and unapologetically about, and something that I will never stop talking about. It's going to be another hill I die on. And if anyone listens to any of my other podcasts, you'll know that I'm dying on a lot of hills. So thank you. Please hit that subscribe button so that more people can hear about what I'm doing. Send this to somebody who needs to hear it. And I hope we can connect online.